Welcome in, race fans, to this edition of Through the Gears presented by Frontstretch. I'm your host, Tino, and I can't wait to get back into the NASCAR racing, winning, and playoff action. This weekend, it kicks off at Atlanta Motor Speedway, the NASCAR Playoffs. The moment we've all been waiting for. It's time to get closer to crowning a champion and win some races on the way to doing so. But before we get into all that, I have to give a special shout out, a bunch of them in fact, but first and foremost to my guy, Derek Yoder from Frontstretch. He's the director of partnerships and sales here at Frontstretch, and he hooked me up with some killer Frontstretch merch. As you can see by the shirt right here, I'll be repping this every episode and every show for you guys. But that's not all. Very, very happy to have my own Frontstretch hat. Look at that. Very clean. Appreciate Derek for hooking me up with all this fantastic merch. Really appreciate for everything that he does for the Frontstretch team. And this is just another one of the examples of how good he is to us and the work he puts in. So really appreciate Derek for getting us right here looking fancy, looking great with the Frontstretch merch. And if you guys did not know, I will be stepping in for Derek in the NASCAR betting preview show, hosting that as well as Through the Gears here. So you can find me there for more NASCAR betting picks, preview, and analysis, as well as here on Through the Gears. So really appreciate everything Derek has done for me and this Frontstretch team. I'm excited for the NASCAR betting preview show and excited for Through the Gears here as well. We have special shout outs to give out, and that is to Kyle B8 for commenting on the last video, Donald Veal, Mint Zin, Crystal Sparkle, Mike Tag as well. But we can't forget Marcus. Shout out to Marcus as it was his birthday throughout this past week. So appreciate him as he was commenting on the NASCAR betting preview show. He let us know it was his birthday. So birthday weekend for Marcus. Let's win it for him. Appreciate all the comments. Appreciate all the support as always, guys. And without further ado, let's go Through the Gears. I am so excited for the NASCAR playoffs to be here. It feels like it's been a culmination all season long of excitement, finishes, heartbreaks, and defeats, but also success and underdog, all fighting for their chance to make it to the NASCAR playoffs. And this is what it's all about. This is where things will pay off for these drivers and these teams. This is what they've been working for all season long. And for us too, we will now see certain tracks for the second time, with Atlanta being one of them, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But this can now help us in our quest to go out and keep winning races throughout this NASCAR playoffs. I feel like I'm in the NASCAR playoffs myself. I hope you guys feel the same with how many times we've been able to capitalize on races this season, win, and make some profit and make some money with our picks. So I'm really looking forward to the NASCAR playoffs here. And you know who else is? That's Chase Briscoe. What a awesome performance by that 14 car at Darlington. That 3-wide move he made for the lead was one of the best moves for the lead that was ultimately for the win that I have ever seen in my NASCAR fandom and career. And I was so impressed by that race that he drove. Yes, Kyle Larson dominated most of that race, pretty much the whole thing, but Chase Briscoe was always there in second place. He deserved to be up there and have his shot to punch his ticket to the NASCAR playoffs, and he got it done. He wasn't on my card. I did mention him in last week's episode, said he was 70-1, said he was strong at that type of racetrack. So I'm glad that I at least maybe floated that one out to one of you guys, but ultimately I didn't bet on him, but it was still great to see him get the win. Guys on our card was Christopher Bell, finished in third, had him for top Toyota as well, so that one did hit, but also had Chris Buescher for top Ford. He was the second place Ford to Chase Briscoe, as I mentioned. Denny Hamlin was also on the outright winners card. I felt like we needed to have one of the favorites in Hamlin, Larson, or Reddick. Reddick ultimately had a tough race battling illness, but Denny Hamlin was there up until the end, took a different strategy, getting tires. Another driver I wanted to mention was someone that we didn't bet on, but it was Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch ultimately ran a great race, finishing up second, one place short. But to me, to see him drive the wheels off that thing in a season where it's been super hard for that team to really unload at raw speed and make the adjustments necessary throughout the race to get better, they've done that since the Olympic break for RCR. So if anything, Kyle Busch can kind of hold his head high on that. You know, I think they are starting to turn things around. We'll see how they continue to go and fare throughout the playoffs finishing wise. but where they're at right now in the last 3 weeks, they've shown race winning speed. So that's a plus for Kyle Busch. He doesn't make it in, unfortunately. Neither does Bubba Wallace. And that was one of our other picks to win. We had him at 31-1 earlier in the week, and he starts on the pole. I was proud of that. I was real proud of that, but ultimately it's about how you finish. And Bubba just wasn't able to do so. He had a strong car, top 5 car, ran well throughout the race, but Briscoe was just the man that got it done. He was a man on a mission. And that is something I can respect if I'm going to lose some money ultimately in the end. But we're back now. Time to profit. Let's turn the gears around here and make sure we know who and what to bet on for Atlanta this weekend. For the prep in this one thing that I really want to consider is the playoff picture. With this being an insane race to start the playoffs, and especially with what we've seen at Atlanta before, and it being a super speedway now, there are a lot of drivers that may not want to take the risk, may not want to drive up front, may not want to be aggressive in hopes of staying out of the wrecks and really salvaging a good points day if that is something that they could be capable of doing. Now, I say that in part because Chase Briscoe, Harrison Burton, Ty Gibbs, Martin Truex Jr., the guys below the playoff cut line, are not really capable of just riding around in this one. I think they would probably prefer to get points to know that they are going to be able to have a shot of advancing to the next round. But at the same time, risk versus reward. The risk is driving to the front, and then the reward would be getting the points. But there's more risk to that. Another risk would be getting involved in the big one, not being able to make points throughout this race. Then we have Watkins Glen, my favorite track, but it's a road course, hard for some drivers. Bristol, also a little bit unpredictable with who's going to be able to show up and bring speed to that racetrack. Tire compounds are going to factor in. All this is stuff we need to be aware of heading into this race. And I think that's important to note because this will be a key race for some drivers. I don't think a lot of guys in this playoff picture are going to want to run up front or going to want to be in the mix in case they get in trouble. And that's what they want to avoid. They want to avoid the wrecks. They want to avoid stuff that they can't control in this one. And let me know what you guys are thinking about how certain drivers will fare in this one. To me, I think the drivers outside of the playoffs already have an edge, already have an advantage in this one. Because yes, their team, they could be working with teammates, for instance, Chris Busch or Brad Keselowski, some of the other guys out there, Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. But to me, they have nothing to lose. This is a super speedway race where now that it's in the playoffs shifts the dynamic of this track. And I also want to note that the way I look at Atlanta is not the same as Daytona and it's not the same as Talladega. I understand that those are both, and they're all super speedway races. But the thing that stands out to me the most about Atlanta in recent years since its reconfiguration is that the best of the best, the top drivers, especially at super speedways, but just in general, have won this race. Starting off with William Byron in 2022. Then we have Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, William Byron again, and Daniel Suarez. And hey, Daniel Suarez is a good super speedway racer, finished second in the previous Atlanta race last season. So my point with that is, I understand the unpredictability that can come with super speedways, but I don't think Atlanta is a track like that. I feel like this is going to take more technique, more skill, and there's a reason we've seen the top drivers consistently win at this track. We're talking William Byron, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, William Byron again, and then Daniel Suarez. But that was a 3-wide photo finish. Who was around Suarez? Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has been dominant at super speedways with RCR. So to me, I feel like this track, as much as it can be unpredictable with it being a super speedway, we need to note that these guys that have been fast here have been in top equipment, have been some of the fastest cars we've seen throughout the entire regular season. That's something that's important to note because I feel like that will be a factor again with Atlanta, even with it being in the playoffs. Taking a look at the odds breakdown here, one thing that's important to note, as I alluded to in the last segment there, was these playoff drivers. Well, who am I certainly looking at to make an impact in this one, to make a splash, to be aggressive, to not necessarily worry about points because they are potentially below the cut line or going to be after this race if they do not get enough points, if they feel like they need to go out and get a win and capitalize on this type of racetrack early on in this first round. Well, to me, the first driver I think of is Austin Cindric. he is, he's a great road course racer, and we saw him won at WWT earlier this year as well. But super speedways has just been his thing. He's just been a great super speedway driver. He's aggressive. He's leading the pack at times, and we've seen him charge to the front multiple times in this race. And I think that's another thing, going back to the Atlanta prep. The one thing I'm looking at, I mentioned how different this racetrack is from the other super speedways. If you're strong at Daytona and you're strong at Talladega, that is great. But I'm looking at the last 3 Atlanta races right now. There's 3 drivers that have finished inside the top 12 in each 3 of the last 3 Atlanta races. Austin Cindric, Kyle Busch, and Ryan Blaney. Every time they just seem to be able to make their way up towards the front, get to the back, and avoid the wrecks when they need to, and then finish strong. The fact that they're able to finish those races, the only 3 drivers inside the top 12 consistently, that leads me to believe that when it comes time now for a driver like Austin Cindric to advance in the NASCAR playoffs, he's sitting in 10th, +2 from the cut line. This could be a shot, and if anything, he can make up for it in Watkins Glen if it does not happen here at Atlanta this weekend. I also wanted to make a note that I feel like Brad Keselowski, who's in 8th, only has a +3 point differential from the cut line there. In 7th, it's Chase Elliott with +9. I think that's where we'll see the aggressiveness differ. Brad Keselowski in 8th with +3 from the cut line. We got Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, Daniel Suarez, Alex Bowman, Briscoe, Burton, Ty Gibbs, and Martin Truex Jr. I think from 8th back, all those drivers I mentioned are going to have to be aggressive in this race. All the other guys, they have enough. They may not have enough, but Chase Elliott, for example, +9. Denny Hamlin, +10. Blaney, +13. That may be enough to get you past this race with just finishing, with just sort of laying back, not being as aggressive as these other guys may have to be, because they need their destinies in their hands. If they want to advance, if you're Austin Cindric and you want to make a deep playoff push, a win here could be huge. If you're Ty Gibbs, if you're Martin Truex Jr., you're going to have to get points at this track, because although better tracks for them are coming up, like we saw Bristol and Watkins Glen earlier this season, you can't always bank on that to be the case. And I feel like with Daniel Suarez as well, he won here. Maybe this is a track where he just drives the same type of way, also good at Watkins Glen, and maybe he can sort of be able to take the risk to get an advantage, and potentially win at this track, or just have a strong run to keep the points moving on up and staying above that cut line. Brad Keselowski, another driver. He's, been pretty aggressive at super speedways that we've seen him pushing, but it's without a doubt, he's one of the best super speedway racers. And I think another thing to note with him is he was close to winning here too. He finished second to Joey Logano. I think this could be Brad's chance. I think he might be due. If he wants a long playoff run, avoiding those tracks we haven't seen that much speed out of him, like Bristol and Watkins Glen, this could be his shot to punch his ticket to the next round where he could see some better results. Now let's take a look at more of the odds breakdown in this one. We talked about the drivers, we talked about their playoff implications, and we talked about what Atlanta can bring for us to analyze. And the fact of the matter is, Ryan Blaney, like we mentioned, is one of the favorites in this one, but for good reason. We're looking at him at 12-1 on FanDuel. Those are the best odds here as I'm taking a look at the Action Network. They can provide us a giant scope of every single sports book and every single odds for sportsbook in your state, or also just different values out there. So like I said, Ryan Blaney, the favorite at 12-1. Joey Logano, another one. And I think those are both fair. I would only choose one if I had to. But then we also see Brad Keselowski 13-1 with Kyle Busch 12-1 on BetMGM. That number went down from earlier this week. Chase Elliott 16-1, Byron 14-1, Denny Hamlin 16-1 as well. So out of those drivers, I think I'm leaning Ford in this one. Think about the drivers that could win this race from a Ford perspective. We talked about how good Ryan Blaney is here. Joey Logano has won here as well and has been strong on the super speedways. I'm very aware of Joey Logano in this one. I think I'm choosing Blaney. I think I'm choosing Cindric, another one, over Logano. But it's really throwing darts in this one. I don't want to say that this track is as crazy as Daytona or as crazy as Talladega. I mentioned that. I really do feel like it's going to take extra skill and the top equipment to make this happen for these guys to win this race. At the same time, this is the first time Atlanta's been a playoff race. But who's to say these playoff drivers don't want to win here? Don't want to be aggressive to get that done. Ryan Blaney is always a driver going out and trying to lead laps no matter what his points position is or if he has wins on the season or not at super speedways. Like we mentioned too, he has 3 super speedway wins in the last 4 years. We talked about that at Daytona a couple weeks ago. So these 4 drivers, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Austin Cindric, Chris Buescher, and even, hey, you can get Justin Haley in the mix too. I just feel like with Ford's sample size in this one, where we're seeing front row, Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland, Ford may be the key for us in terms of who we're going to pick to win this race outright. Moving down the line, now we see Kyle Larson 17-1 to win this race outright. Same thing with Daniel Suarez at 22-1. Chris Buescher is 18-1. Pretty good value there for Buescher. I can see him getting a race win within these next 10 races here. It's a shame he's not in the playoffs, but I still think that team is hungry. And nothing that's important to note, though, will he get off of Brad's bumper in this one? Definitely not. If Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher are locked in like they have been all season long at these super speedways, they're teammates and they'll stick together. Chris Buescher will definitely push Brad to the win. So if you're thinking about Buescher in this one, that's something that I would note. The Team Penske guys, all 3 of them are going for the race win, right? All 3 of them are in the playoffs. So that's something that I can sort of consider when making our outright winners picks. Ross Chastain, 20-1. Christopher Bell, 24-1. I like that value for Christopher Bell. He's not necessarily a super speedway guy in terms of like leading laps and winning these races, but he's always there. And so maybe he is. Maybe he's one of the ones that are, under the radar super speedway guys, because in this race, Christopher Bell finished in 3rd in the last 3. It was the first one, Atlanta in 2023, the spring race there. He finished in 3rd. And last week at Daytona, or a couple weeks ago at Daytona, Christopher Bell was up there. He was pushing Kyle Busch to the win potentially. So to me, I'm just looking for a driver that can be there at the end. And I think Christopher Bell does a very good job of that, just managing his stuff. And then, overtime restart, Christopher Bell, there he is in the 1st and 2nd row. Keep an eye out for him. Austin Cindric, 22-1, great value. Great value for what he's trying to do here, for what his playoff situation is, for the ability for him to potentially need to win in this one, for the aggression he's going to have to take, and for the way he's raced here before. 22-1 is great value for him. Martin Truex Jr., 26-1. I said it last week there. I got to lay off of Truex in this one, and then he finished almost in dead last. He crashed on lap 2. So, hey, I'm rooting for Truex. I want him to do well. I want him to ride off into the sunset, and I want to bet on him. I want to be able to win from Martin Truex Jr. winning. But they have just not shown me any speed in this one, and the fact that it is a super speedway race, I was trying to push the narrative. He's finished all the laps in the last few at Talladega, Daytona. It just didn't work. So Truex in this one, I just got to fully lay off. It is important to note, though, he's dead last in the playoff standings. He is minus, 1 to the cut line now. Obviously, everything will sort of shake out in terms of how many points is necessary to move on to the next round after this race. But if I'm going to target Truex, I would wait until wait till Watkins, Glen, and Bristol. Bristol, he doesn't necessarily have the best results at, but earlier this season, with all the tire fall-up, it was a battle between him and Denny Hamlin. Tyler Reddick has 1 super speedway win at Talladega. He's 22-1. Michael McDowell always races strong here. I believe he started in the front row in this race earlier this season. 26-1 for him. Then it brings me to Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace, 30-1, 31-1 on FanDuel. He's as low as 22-1 on BetMGM, so be sure to price shop with Bubba. But that's great value, especially for a driver. Like I said, he's going to push Tyler Reddick. He's going to help out Denny Hamlin and any of the other Toyota teammates when he can. But the fact that he has no pressure now, he didn't make the playoffs. That is unfortunate. But it takes the pressure off that he's had on him all season. Just go out and race. Go out and be aggressive because you have nothing to lose now. And I feel like that could help the 23 team in this one to get a good finish. And the value there is certainly there for a driver like Bubba, who has a top 5 finish at Daytona and a top 5 finish at Atlanta earlier this season. Ty Gibbs, 32-1 is the best value there for him on FanDuel. I'm really interested to see if I had to pick a driver to have a surprise positive playoff run in this one, it would be Ty Gibbs. With going to Watkins Glen next week and Bristol the week after, 2 tracks that he looked like he could potentially get a win at this past season and last season as well, I really like the value for Ty Gibbs to continue on in this playoffs. He's my guy right now to be a surprise performer, to potentially make it not to the championship, but deep in this playoffs, especially with him being 15th -1 in the cut line. I feel like not many people may be thinking about that with Ty Gibbs. It's all about finishing up front consistently, and I think their average running position for that 54 team has been just that. This week at Atlanta, I'm not counting on him here, but I definitely would think the next couple of weeks play into his hand. Alex Bowman, 37-1. That's the best value you'll find for Hendrick Motorsports driver. Todd Gillen, 40-1. Chase Briscoe, 40-1. Josh Berry, 50-1. Austin Dillon, 60-1. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., when can he show up at these super speedways? He's been strong. He's known for winning, Daytona 500, Talladega, Daytona as well. Could he get up front in this one? 50-1 is decent value for Ricky. But then we see Corey LaJoie, 55-1. Not really liking that. It used to be more fun when Corey was 70-1, 80-1, 100-1 to win. To me, the risk and the reward there is just not there. I'd rather put my 50-1 bet, flyer, throwing darts on Ricky Stenhouse Jr., a driver that's actually proven winning races in this one. Eric Jones, 60-1. Harrison Burton, 80-1. Noah Gragson, 65, and Justin Haley, 70-1. I think that's a good place to stop in this one based off the other drivers on the board that are all 100-1 and more. Now to the outright winners. This is the moment you've all been waiting for. I understand it's Atlanta. I understand it's a super speedway race, but I'm not just covering my eyes and throwing darts at a dartboard. I'm at least looking where the target is and trying to put some picks together that can potentially help us and guide us into a certain direction. I think Ford is key. We came to them and they came to that conclusion when we were doing the prep and looking at the odds breakdown. So the Ford drivers will be taking to potentially win this race. At the same time, with that being said, we can also note that when we head to the prop bets, see what Ford's looking like for a manufacturer bet in terms of their value there. But I want to stick with the outright winners first in this one and which drivers I think are going to win this race. First up, it's going to be Ryan Blaney. You have to respect Blaney when we come to the super speedways. Understand he's a favorite, so some people may not want to take him because of his low value. Completely get that. But 12-1 for me for Blaney at a super speedway track where he is, he has finishes himself of 2nd place, of 9th place, and 7th place in these last 3 Atlanta races. To me, I think that the film don't lie when it comes to Blaney on these super speedways. Also important to note, he finished dead last in the race last weekend. So to me, Blaney's been a guy always that if he's mad or if he has a poor finish that he could have done better on the week prior, it was obviously not his fault as MTJ got into him. But my point is, Blaney's been a guy for me that I've seen that always comes back and always responds. Because of that, Ryan Blaney 12-1, I'm willing to bet on him regardless of him being a favorite. Next up is going to be Brad Keselowski. Another type of favorite, I know, but with him being below or around that playoff cut line that he doesn't want to be below it, he's in 8th spot right now, so he is in a good position, but that's also tricky because there's a lot of things that can happen in this race. He's below the threshold that I was talking about before of points where it's Chase Elliott +9, and then you see Brad only +3. So to me, with him being below that line, for me and for us of drivers that are going to potentially be aggressive and not, I think that means Brad is going to go out and try to win this race, and I don't want to have him on my card for this one. So to me, Brad Keselowski and Ryan Blaney are the two I'm looking at. I know their values are low, but when we look at these past drivers to win at Atlanta, it's been the best of the best. Sticking with that, who else can be the best of the best? Well, when we go to super speedways, it's Austin Cindric. Austin Cindric, 22-1. That's more like it in terms of value for a super speedway. I think more people will be willing to get on that. And I completely agree. I'm with you. Because I think Austin Cindric, not only does he have the Penske power, but he has the ability to move through the field and be aggressive and know how the car is going to potentially handle. It'll be a different style race. Like we said, playoffs, different time of the year. But with him being up front in this race last year, finishing inside the top 12 in each of the last 3 here, I think that 2 car is going to be a force to be reckoned with, knowing this could be a shot to advance on to the next round. And then I'm going to have 2 more drivers I'll point out to you guys. One is in the NASCAR playoffs and one is out. I think these, I'm iffy in terms of I'd go with one or the other. I think it's 50-50, whoever you want to choose. One driver is just better on super speedways, and that's Bubba Wallace. And the other is Christopher Bell. But at the same time, when it comes to finishing results, I feel like Bell will be in a spot where he can go out and finish strong. He's +27 at the cut line in 2nd place. And with him being a great road course racer, really good driver at Bristol as well. Why not go for the win? Why not try to win it if you're Christopher Bell? And I think he has the ability to be aggressive. And I think Christopher Bell at 24-1, that's what really sold me on him. So Christopher Bell, 24-1 is a driver I like in this one. And Bubba Wallace will be the other one, 31-1 for Bubba. We've talked about him the last few weeks. He hasn't really been able to come up clutch in terms of winning the race, but the speed has been there. So to me, I love the speed out of that 23 car. Nothing to lose in this one. I think both of those two drivers are ones that I would consider throwing on my card based on their value to win the race in this one. I'm going to give flowers to Kyle Busch when it comes to the prop bets. I wanted to have him on my outright winners card as the other guys that finished inside the top 3 in the last 3 Atlanta races, but he's just been so good that I honestly feel like something has got to give. Finishing second at Daytona, second at Darlington, I'm scared to put him on my outright winners card because when I find these trends in the data like that, it almost then goes wrong as it did for Martin Truex Jr. at Daytona. But I'll give him the respect he deserves. Him to finish inside the top 5 for Kyle Busch is plus 240 at Brett Rivers. It's a decent price, but I think that's something that I just would want to have on my card if Kyle Busch does go out and win the race. I'm not betting on him to go out and win the race, but the fact that he has finished inside, like we said, the top 12, finishing very close in 3rd position earlier this season. Then he finished in 5th in the race before that and in 10th the race prior. So Kyle Busch has been strong at this track consistently. So because of that, plus 240 for a top 5's Kyle Busch is the only top 5 play I'll be doing in this one, with it being a super speedway race like we mentioned. I want plus money when it comes to props. That's as simple as it could be. The props will be less in this one. And most of all, my overall units on each and every play are going to be a little bit smaller and minimal because of the super speedway unpredictability. Now, I'm not afraid to go out and bet on these drivers like we talked about. I'm not afraid to go out and pick winners because I feel like with the trends and what we've been seeing at this racetrack, we can go out and find the guys that are going to win. But at the same time, do some, risk as much as you would like. Be aware of the amount that you are betting with it being a super speedway race. Bet responsibly is all I'm trying to say in this one. As with the props, that is definitely something I take into mind because I take that into consideration. Plus, 100 for a top 10 when we can see drivers like Cody Ware and Justin Haley get top 10s for 7-1. That's where I really mean be aware of where you're betting because we can see those things happening a lot more at this type of racetrack. So to me, when it comes to top 10s, I do like Bubba Wallace plus 180. I think that's fair value to get a top 10. Austin Cindric, if we're betting on him to win the race, plus 145 at Caesars is good value for a top 10. So right there, I think those are the lowest values I would go with those type of guys because we are betting on them to win the race. So we might as well cheat and get them for a top 10 and be able to make profit if they don't come through for the outright win. Justin Haley is another driver where plus 400, that can provide us with better value for a driver that's been able to finish races, been able to be up front in that Rick Ware Racing vehicle and be able to really outperform in his equipment and take advantage of this being that type of racetrack. So I think Justin Haley plus 400 is decent value there. Another one that we could find for higher odds would be, Cody Ware. We see the most at plus 1,400. I wouldn't really touch that. But at the same time, it's worth it. He finished inside the top 5 at Daytona or something like that. And then we look at John Hunter Nemechek plus 550, Harrison Burton plus 300, Noah Gragson plus 300 as well. Those would be the types of guys that I would look at in terms of being able to get a long shot, high value top 10 finish in this one. The thing I wanted to know with prop bets was if you go onto the DraftKings Sportsbook or any of the other sportsbook that have the team prop of winning manufacturer, you can find Ford at plus 135 to win this race. Now, I don't necessarily love the value, but I love the drivers that come with it. For all the guys we mentioned, Austin Cindric, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Brian Keselowski, Chris Buescher, Front Row Motorsports, and more, at plus 135, I think Ford gives us the best opportunity to take advantage of those drivers to win this race. So to me, I think if you want to bet, use your betting card around Ford and around that prop, that could be a play for you as well, considering the amount of options that are out there for Ford to win this race. So to me, I'm going Ford heavy in this one. All right, and now for my favorite plays in this one for Atlanta, the first playoff race of this NASCAR season. It's going to be Austin Cindric. 22-1 is great value for the driver that's proven himself not only at this track, but other super speedways throughout his career and throughout this season. So to me, give me that 2 car at plus money, major value to win this race outright. For anything else, I also do like Ford, like I mentioned, but not necessarily my favorite play when it comes to value. I think Ford gives us the best shot to win this race, so that's something I'd consider there. Toyota at plus 330 is okay, but they just have the smallest sample size in the field, so I wouldn't really take too much consideration. And that'll do it for this edition of Through the Gears, presented by Frontstretch. Really appreciate Derek Yoder once again for hooking me up with the 6 swag, and be sure to stay tuned to the Stock Car Scoop after Sunday's race to give you all the best breakdowns, insight, and analysis of the NASCAR Cup Series playoff racing action, as it is going to be an epic race. Atlanta did not disappoint earlier this year with a 3-wide photo finish, and I'm looking forward to watching this race and winning some bets along the way as well. Let me know in the comments below who you think is going to win the race. And let me know if you have any other NASCAR betting questions or comments for me. You can find me on social media at Tino, P-A-T-T-I-G-N-O. Listen to me on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio throughout the weekend as well to help you guys get ready for some NASCAR playoff action and betting action as well. I have my updated betting card out there this weekend for you guys and any other NASCAR content that you can find from me. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys next week as we go through the gears.